Peace and blessings. Before I begin, I want everybody know you can buy my book on mindfulness and meditation for kids 8 to 12. We will talk about that a little bit later. All right, let's begin the live stream. Let's begin. Let's see who jumps in with us. I feel like today's going to be a good day. All right. Let's see. Hey, what's going on, Janique? What's going on? Glad to see you join. All right, I'm about to begin in a few minutes. I'm about to jump on real quick. I'm just waiting for some people to join me on my live stream on Insight Timer, and then I'm gonna start talking. And tonight's topic, we're gonna talk about the books of the dead. Books of the dead from different cultures and what they could teach us about how to live. So if you can't stick around, I'm gonna begin in about 6 minutes. How's everything going with you? All right, waiting for y'all to join in. Got a good signal. Michelle, how you doing? All right, let me hop on YouTube real quick. Say a good word. Saying peace and blessings to everybody. All right, we're going to begin in a couple of minutes. All right, Michelle, let me know. Can you see and hear me over here on this end? Am I coming in clear? Good. All right, good. I'm getting a perfect signal, getting a good signal. All right, we're going live on 3 different platforms. We got Insight Timer, we got YouTube, we got Instagram. I'm waiting to see who piles in with us. Clara. All right, good. Clara, you're getting relaxed, getting ready to go to bed. Well, hopefully you can stick around with us for a little bit. I'm just waiting to see who piles in. We're going to get started in about 4 minutes. You're going to try, Clara? All right, good. That's good enough for me, as long as you try. Remember, have a look at my profile. Look at the link in the profile. See if there's anything there that you might be interested in. I had a good day today. My mood was up, my energy was up. I had a few revelations about how life works and how people work. I feel excellent about things. There's a lot of promise. I shaved. That's always a good start. I shaved a little bit. I don't look as I'm not wolfing like I was. And I did something on the books of the dead, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as more people come in. But yeah, there was one book of the dead that I really wanted to add into the conversation, which is I keep mentioning it. If you were here over the last couple of weeks, I keep mentioning the Bandlit of Righteousness, or the Lafafa Sadek, because I keep wanting to talk about it because not a lot of people know about that book. They know about the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. They know about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but the Book of Gates and the Lafafa Sadek, nobody knows about those. So I keep wanting to figure out ways to add Lafafa Sadek into the conversation, but I never get around to it. I tried to today, but I didn't have enough time to really go into it. But in this one, I'll talk about the Book of Gates. I'll talk about the in Peru, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and the Bardo Todo, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I covered a lot of material. I just didn't get everything in there that I wanted. Yeah, Michelle, nobody's ever heard of it. Nobody's ever heard of the Lafafa Sedek, but it's an interesting book. I'll find some kind of a way where I can talk about it, and I'll talk about it for an entire live stream one night. And I keep saying that, but then other ideas keep coming to me. I was going to do it this week, and then I thought about this topic: the various books of the dead and how they can teach us what they can teach us about life. So we're going to begin in a little over 1 minute. Anybody learn any life lessons they want to share tonight before we get started? In 1 minute, give me a life lesson in 63 seconds. Anybody can hop in. I'll give you what I learned. I learned today, or I realized today, that we live in a culture that teaches everybody to chase their dreams, but they don't teach anybody how to live in reality. People get devastated by reality nowadays. We're not really equipped to handle it. Maybe that's something I can talk about. See? Now I'm going to talk about that instead of the Lafafa Sedek. Yep, the meaning of life is peace within and universal consciousness. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. All right, we're getting close to the 7-minute mark. So we can hop in and we can get started. Okay, so tonight what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the books of the dead, which is an unfortunate title. So it's an unfortunate categorization because what we consider to be books of the dead in the Western world are actually books about life. More specifically, they're about the afterlife. Rosanna, how you doing? Glad you could make it. So in the Western world, these books, which are called funerary texts, they're texts that get buried with people when they die, or they're texts about the afterlife. And there's a lot of wisdom in them, a lot of information about how we can live life and what obstacles we can overcome in life and how we come to a state of realization in life. So these books that are considered to be quote unquote books of the dead are actually books about the living, but just different stages of living and different ways of living and different dimensions of consciousness. But people in the Western world, because they're funerary texts, they give them the unfortunate title of books of the dead. And we don't want to think about them as books of the dead. They're books even more about life than anything else. You know, if you think about a lot of religious texts are what be categorized as quote unquote books of the dead. The Bible is a book of the dead because it talks about the afterlife in some ways. It talks about other realms of existence in some ways. It talks about Jesus Christ dying and coming back from the dead on the third day. It talks about the valley of dry bones, where the body of the prophet Elijah was thrown down into the valley, and the dead man touched his bones. And when the dead man touched his bones, he was resurrected and brought right back to life because the power of God that was in the bones of Elijah brought him back from the grave. See, these are life books. They're not books of the dead. They're books of the living. They're books for us. But because we live in a death culture, we confuse death with life and life with death. We think God is the devil and we think that heaven is hell. They're not books about the afterlife. They're books about life itself. This right here, what we're living in now, this is the afterlife. If you believe in spiritual consciousness, if you believe in life after death, when you believe in life before death, this is the afterlife. In another realm, we existed and we died and we came here. This is purgatory for some people. This is hell for some people. And the promise is to die here and to go somewhere else and become alive somewhere else, right? Or we can become alive right here. We can be resurrected from the dead right here, right now. But the state that many of us are in is a state of death. In order for us to emerge out of that state of death, we have to draw wisdom from the books of life. The books of life are labeled books of the dead, but they're books of the living to show us how to live and to help us to pierce through the veil of illusion so that we can see reality as it truly is. And we haven't been taught to do that. We've never been taught how to see reality as it truly is and how to overcome our fear of death. Our ancestors knew how to overcome the fear of of death. So for them, death was not something to be terrified of. So they didn't have to write a book. They didn't have to write a book about death. Our ancestors never wrote books about death. They wrote books about how to become more alive. Their rituals were about life. Their rituals and their ceremonies were about connecting to the higher power to become more alive and take more of the energy of the universe and bring it within ourselves so that we can become more alive. Life could mean more. And if life means more within us, other people's lives mean more. Not just our own lives, but the lives of others who share the universal space with us. The lives of the trees mean something. The lives of the flowers and plants mean something. The lives of all things mean something. Tiffany, how you doing? Once you draw the wisdom out of the so-called books of the dead. Now, the book of the dead, or the books of the dead, are really about the stages of life and the stages of personal development. And we're going to start with one of my favorites, the Book of Gates, the ancient Egyptian Book of Gates. Now, this is a book that's fascinating because it's so subtle and it's not even that long, but it's packed with a lot of symbolism that I think is necessary for us today. The Book of Gates is a book that was a funerary text. It was buried with wealthy men and women and kings and royalty and nobility in ancient Egypt. So when they went down into the tombs, they went down into the tombs with some of their personal belongings and with books. And these books had spells in them. And these books actually were acting as kind of like a guide. These books were kind of a guide of how to navigate through the afterlife and survive so you can make it to paradise. So whatever the idea of paradise was at that time. The ancient Egyptian Book of Gates is a book about the journey of the sun. Our souls are connected to the sun. The sun is a soul symbol. So when the sun sets, what happens to it? Well, the ancient Egyptians believed that when the sun sets, the sun has to travel through the underworld. And every hour of the night is symbolized by a gate. So there's 12 hours at night and 12 hours during the day in Egypt at that time. So the book of the gates has 12 gates, and the sun has to pass through each of these gates for every hour of the night. And each gate is guarded by a goddess, and each gate is also guarded by demons and monsters, right? And as the sun takes this journey through the underworld, when we're asleep at night, our souls are supposedly taking this journey through the underworld as well. That's why quite often you have dreams at night, and these dreams are like nightmares, because the ancient Egyptians, they believed that your soul was actually leaving the body and taking this journey through the underworld. And there are some parts of the underworld that are pleasant. Why? And that's why we have pleasant dreams and pleasant realizations. And sometimes our dreams are horrifying and full of things that we don't understand, because supposedly we're traveling through a different realm, just like in life. When you're traveling through new stages of your life and new stages of development, sometimes you're going to be afraid. Sometimes you're going to be filled with a state of bliss and happiness and joy at this new stage. But at the same time, there's some things that can happen in a new stage of your development that's going to be terrifying, right? And what kind of things did you encounter as you were journeying through the realm of the dead at night? Well, one of the things that would happen was when the sun began his journey through the gates of the underworld, he would travel with two other gods, two other beings. One was a god called Hu. Hu was the god of divine utterances. And some people say that Hu created the world by speaking his own name. He said, Hu, and the world came into being. He's the god of magical utterances. What you say shall come into being. There was another god called Sa, or Sia. Sia is the god of divine perception. These two gods are very, very important because one, the god of magical utterances, was a protector. His words would protect the sun. Sa, or Sia, was the god of divine perception, which kept the sun's mind sharp, because as the sun set and traveled through the underworld, something interesting would happen. He would forget who he was. And that happens to us too, right? When you go through a traumatic event, when you're going through a state of depression, when you're having a bout of sadness, when you're not feeling quite like yourself, what happens? You forget who you are. All the stuff that we talk about, how we're divine within and we must love ourselves, we forget that when we go through hard times. We try our best to build ourselves up and prepare ourselves for the eventuality of something going left, the eventuality of something happening, the eventuality of death, the eventuality of losing something. But then when something really painful happens, we forget about our divine power. We forget about who we are. We forget our sacred name. So we travel in a state of being lost, surrounded on all sides by things we're terrified of. Because once you get traumatized, what happens? You become scared of everything. When you're traumatized, you're afraid to go to the same places. You're afraid of the same event could happen. So even things that are very familiar to you become strange. You feel like you're traveling through this weird, strange realm. You don't recognize it. Everything becomes monstrous and demonic because you have amnesia, because you forgot who you are. So the God Sia is there to keep your mind sharp. You're going to need your divine perception to fully understand what's going on, to remember who you are. And as the sun God rise, he's traveling through the underworld. The souls of the blessed dead will see him, right? And they will chant to him and call to him, and they'll say, Hail Ra, Min Ma'at Ra, the Lord of diadems. What does that mean? Well, Ra is the sun god's name. Men Ma'at means the son of Ma'at. Ma'at was the goddess of balance, justice, reciprocity. The universe could not exist without Ma'at. There are some stories of the creation of the universe where Ma'at, who was the goddess of all these things, balance, order. What was that? This thing shut down. Hold on, y'all. I'm still here. I'm still here. This thing just slow. Man, I was going in. And this thing shut down. I had the nerve to shut down. My bad, y'all. I'm still here. Smitty Burns, what up, brother? I'm just trying to fix my Insight Timer live stream real quick. Give me a second. I'm going to go back in. Let me know if y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me? Let me know if y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me? All right, I'm back in action. All right. All right, can y'all hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. I think I'm working now. All right, I think we're working. Okay. So if you can hear me on Insight Timer, let me know. Okay, good. I see you guys are still there. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened. It just shut down for no reason. But yeah, like I was saying, so when when the sun god is traveling through the underworld, the blessed dead are calling to him, Hail Ra, Min Ma'at Ra. And that means that Hail Ra, the son of Ma'at, and the whole universe was created by Ma'at, who was the goddess of order and justice and reciprocity and balance. You need all of these things to sustain the system as vast as the universe. But also there was another goddess or god, Hika, magic. Just like the Spanish word Mágica. That's where we get the word magic from. The goddess Hika. She was a goddess of magic. So it took magic and divine power, and it took balance and reciprocity and justice to sustain the universe, right? So they're calling him this great God. They're reminding him who he is everywhere he goes, which is very, very important. Because when you go through a traumatic event, you forget who you are. When things happen that are destroying you on the inside, you forget who you are. You forget your blessed divine power. So you need support. No matter how powerful you are, one thing about us as Americans, we have our narratives and our myths about our history and our warriors and our heroes and our sheroes. But one thing that we never stress the support that they have. Grandma to the kids. Yep, that's that. My principle. Salute, Rachel. But so many of us need that support, and they don't talk about the support. We get so much energy and so much focus to our heroes and our sheroes. We never talk about the individuals who supporting them behind the scenes. We talk about the Black Panthers, and we talk about Eldridge Cleaver, but we don't talk about Kathleen Cleaver, his wife. We talk about George Washington. I don't even know George Washington's wife. We talk about Malcolm X, but how often do we talk about Betty Shabazz? We talk about Martin Luther King, but how often do we talk about Sister Coretta Scott King? How many really, really great people had individuals behind them that helped them endure all the pain and suffering they had to go through? Well, that's what we need too. So many of us, we have this false narrative of these heroes who battle these dragons and overcome these odds and these obstacles all by themselves. Hey, what's going on, man? Peace, peace, peace. We have this narrative that everybody's fighting these obstacles and overcoming all this hellish nonsense all by themselves. But all these individuals had support. But because in our mind we were trained to think they overcame all of these obstacles and these problems by themselves, we try to do the same thing ourselves. We try to do the same thing that we think happened in the past. So we think our heroes overcame alone. We try to overcome alone. But our heroes did not overcome anything alone. They all had support from their wives, their husbands, their children, their families, their master teachers, their fellow disciples. Nobody makes a big imprint unless they have somebody who had their back. Even the great spiritual leaders. Even Jesus Christ had a disciple who he loved and trusted the most and spoke to and confided in. When he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, he brought 3 of his disciples with him. Why? For emotional support. When he was breaking down and praying and saying, God, pass this cup before me, and sweating blood because of the tension and the stress, he had 3 of his disciples with him and got mad at them because he's like, yo, y'all fell asleep? He was in the Garden of Gethsemane freaking out because he knew the Romans were coming for him, and he brought his support with him. He needed them to have his back, even if they couldn't do anything. Even if he knew he was going to have to die, he's like, I just need y'all to have my back. Just be there for me. You know, same thing with the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad had, I think he had friends as well. I forgot what they called them. The friends of the disciples. I forgot the term for it, but even he had support. The Buddha had support. When the Buddha died, he had his right-hand man with him. And he told his right-hand man, listen, we did something great here. We did something amazing. He gave him 2 jewels of wisdom. He said, listen, man, when I'm dead, if these rules that we created for this spiritual system that we developed don't work, get rid of them. And he said the second thing Buddha told his right-hand man, I think his name was Ananga, he said, don't let nobody worship me as a god. So even these great individuals who we consider to be spiritual leaders, they had individuals who they leaned on for support. Arjuna, the great warrior from the Bhagavad Gita, he had Krishna with him. Krishna was trying to talk him into fighting and going into war, and Krishna had to watch him fall to the ground and break down because of the stress of having to fight his own family to preserve the peace in the kingdom. See, and that's why these stories are important. That's a life lesson right there. Don't ever think you got to go it alone. You're traveling through the darkness, dealing with depression, dealing with alcoholism, dealing with inner pain, dealing with trauma, dealing with the loss of loved ones. I don't know why we have this sick, toxic individualistic mentality that we got to deal with this on our own. Even the gods needed support. Even the gods needed support. It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to raise us too. When I have my village with me, I feel powerful. I could do more with a village. And so could you. Everybody can do more with a village. We got to support each other. But that's another one of the deep lessons of the books of the dead. Even the sun god Ra, traveling through the underworld, needed people to cheer him on as he was going. He needed the god who was the god of magical utterances. He needed Sia to keep his mind straight, the god of divine perception. He needed that. And that's what all of us need in life, whether it be a teacher, whether it be an advocate of some kind, a social worker for individuals who are going through, certain situations. You're going to need somebody. Choose your family. Your family, your biological family, that's who you're born with. But sometimes you got to choose other individuals to be your family as well, to fill in those gaps, to give you that support that others might not be willing to give you or able to give you. Don't ever try to go it alone. Don't try to go through hell alone. Sometimes we go through such crazy circumstances and situations. When you're in the darkness, you forget who you are. And you need somebody to remind you that you're special, that you're powerful, and that you can get it done. And it's unfortunate when we got to remind ourselves because we think nobody else is around. I do that too. Sometimes I used to leave little notes like, you can do it. But it's even better when somebody tells me that. Yeah, Kate, that's a wonderful thing. The community is really important in a lot of places, but here in the West, because of the nature of our economy and the fact that so many people who are immigrants came to the country, right? But in order to work, some people had to separate themselves from their families. So you had some families who were in the South, and then there was a great migration where a lot of people came up north. A lot of people went to the West. So families were separated for the sake of one person going to work, or the men of the family going to work to keep the family alive. And so we kind of developed this individualistic mentality, separated from family, unfortunately, because of economy. But that's a whole different conversation. Now, there's another book called the Per Em Heru. Now, this is a book called the Per Em Heru, and unfortunately, in Western culture, it's called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But the title, the Per Em Heru, don't have anything in it about death. Oh, thank you for the donation, Rachel. The Per Em Heru don't have anything in it about death. The Per Em Heru actually means the book of going forth by day. So it's actually, once again, not a book about death. It's a book about life. When you go into the tomb and they close those doors, it was expected that your spirit would continue to exist and move throughout the earth, but move in different directions and different dimensions, because your soul in ancient Egypt had 5 different parts. And we can have a whole conversation about that as well. But the Book of the Dead is the Book of the Dead, or the Per Em Heru, the book of going forth by day, is essentially, once again, a guidebook for the afterlife. It tells you about the journey you're going to be taking as you travel through the Egyptian afterlife. It's about what happens, but it gives you life lessons. Kate, thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. So as you journey through the afterlife, there are places, right, that you can't necessarily go to. You can't necessarily go to certain places unless you're a god. So certain places are forbidden for humans to go. So the Book of the Dead, the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, or the Per Em Heru, is a book of spells. And you use these spells to take power upon yourself so that you can travel to these realms where your physical body can't go, your mind can't go, your personality can't go, or some places you can't go to simply because you're immortal. But in order to ascend to higher levels of consciousness and higher levels of power, you use the spells in the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead and call upon certain names and engage in certain activities and eat certain foods, so that way you can empower yourself and you can go to places in your divine body, which is kind of interesting. It's very, very interesting how in the ancient in the Book of the Dead, the Per Em Heru, there are certain foods that you eat that can give you the power to go to certain places. It's the same thing with life. The food that you put in your body empowers you so you can do certain things and go to certain places. You stave off death by eating eating certain foods in the afterlife. Same thing with life. Eat certain foods, you keep death away. Since this whole COVID thing happened, I haven't even got a sniff or a sniffle or a cough or none of that stuff, because I've learned how to eat to live. So I use certain plants for medicine now. I don't even like using a whole lot of Western medicine. I take a pill for blood pressure, but as soon as I find a plant that can lower it and make my own remedies, I'm gonna use that. But I make sure when I get up in the morning, I take that blood pressure pill, and I take a whole bunch of plants. I eat a plant-based diet now. Now I'm staving off death, staving off sickness. I haven't even had a cough or anything in like 2 years, because I learned how to eat certain foods to stave off death. Same thing as the afterlife. So it's telling you right there about your diet. And also, one thing that's interesting is the fact that there's certain places you have to go in the afterlife. In the afterlife, there is a god called Asar. Asar is they call him one of the 16 crucified saviors. Asar, who the Greeks call Osiris, was the god who would judge the dead. Soursop. Okay, I'm gonna try that. Did I take the COVID shot, Jack? I did not take the COVID shot. I made the decision to wait and see how things go. But I'm just taking every imaginable precaution that I can. Not knocking nobody who made that decision. You do what you gotta do for your job, do what you gotta do for your safety. But me personally, I decided just to use plant-based remedies, try to be healthy, trying to lose weight. Yeah, I hear you, Jack. Yeah, there's a lot of age to increase blood pressure. All right, cool. Yeah, plug me. Let me know. Yeah, but like I was saying, it's interesting. The god Asar, right? Asar, who the Greeks call Osiris, is the god of the dead. When you die, in the Bible, they say you die and God's going to judge you. Well, in the Per Em Heru, Asar or Osiris, he's the judge of the dead. And there's a part in the book where you have to go to his realm. You have to go to the chamber of Asar where he's buried in the earth, and you have to pull him out of there. You have to resurrect him to bring him to life so he can escort you to the afterlife, to the place where the blessed dead are. So there was a way you could get to the blessed dead, but Asar had to take you there. But you couldn't go. You couldn't go because you were immortal. So there was actually a spell in there where you could become Heru or Horus. Who is Heru? Who is Horus? Well, Heru was the original name. The name Horus is what the Greeks called Heru. Heru is where we get the word hero. And Heru is the son of Asar, or the son of Osiris. Osiris was killed and resurrected by his wife Isis, but he was also resurrected through the birth of his son, Heru. So in order for you to wake Asar up out of the earth and bring him forth so he could guide you to the afterlife, you had to utter this spell where you would become Heru. You would literally transform and become Heru so he could take you to the afterlife. And that's something that's very, very important to remember. That you can only go to certain places with your God body. You can't go with your physical body. And it's the same thing in this world as well. There's certain powers you can't tap into with your regular body. That's why they have certain techniques like yoga. They have certain techniques in Africa where you have to do certain dances to go into a trance so you can tap into your inner powers and unlock all of that. You can't do it with your regular body and your regular mindset. You got to tap into something else with your spiritual energies. So they have spells for that. Nowadays, we call these spells just science. We might call it sociology. We might call it going into a meditative trance. These are our modern terms, but actually this information is ancient. They just use different words. They might have called it Hika back in the day, or magic. Now we might call it plant-based medicine. Now we might call it cognitive science. But it's the same thing. There's certain things you could do in a meditative trance, and realize in a meditative trance you can't do in a regular mindset. I've had certain meditations where I came to certain realizations and had certain ideas just tap into my mind. At one point in time, I was able to lower my blood pressure with my meditation, but I put on a bunch of weight during COVID, so that's an issue too. But when I was a little bit thinner, one time I had something happen to me. I was in the hospital. I was in a lot of pain, and they came to check on me, and they were like, "Oh man, your blood pressure is so high, Mr. McCory. Are you all right?" And I said, "Hold on, give me 1 second." I sat there, closed my eyes, went into my meditation, opened my eyes. Like 10 minutes later, I said, "Check my blood pressure." They checked my blood pressure. Oh, wow, it dropped. How'd you do that? Because I was able to use my God body. I was able to go to a different realm. I became Heru and I awoke the Asar, the Osiris within myself to take me to that place where I was calmer and healthier. And also, too, I feel like when they're talking about using your God body, peace, what's going on? What's going on? When they talk about using your God body to go to certain levels of consciousness, I also think that they're talking about time travel too. Anybody who knows my lectures and been watching me do these for a while, you know I believe in time travel. I believe it's possible to time travel when you in your God body. And for anybody who was watching me back in the day, I was doing experiments where we were trying to astral project. I don't know if y'all remember that, but I was doing experiments where we were trying to astral project and travel through space. I was gonna push it a step further, see if we could travel through time, but we didn't make it that far. The astral projection wasn't working for a group as big as it was. But yeah, you can once you tap into your God body, you can do all of that. I believe there's a lot you can do in the realm of pure consciousness. I've seen it. You have no idea what I've seen. It's creepy out there. But it's keep in mind, this is from the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. These are really stories about life and what you can do. This is about your potential. You have the power to tap into your God body and become Heru and live longer and have divine perception and have dreams where you can see the future. But it's an issue of you tapping into your God body by changing your diet, changing your habits, meditating, learning how to control the flow of blood in your body, all of that kind of stuff through true self-mastery, not necessarily self-discipline. We're talking about true self-mastery. Now, there's places in the afterlife where you could be eaten alive unless you speak the correct spell, right? So it's the same thing with real life. Trust me, I'm from the hood. I've been in situations where people ran up on me with knives, people ran up on me with guns. I had people pull guns on me before. And I'm not bragging like I'm a tough guy, but I knew how to speak those right words. And I've literally talked myself out of situations where I had guns pointed at me. I've literally talked people out of situations where they were going to fight or kill other individuals. I was in that hell. I could have easily been killed by the spirits of the dead. Those individuals out there running around in the streets high on dust. Because when I was coming up in the hood, everybody was smoking dust. So individuals high on dust, they're like demons in hell. And I had to learn how to channel the mind energy and use the right words and utter the specific spell to awaken the consciousness within them so that they would put that gun down and let me walk by, or put the knife away and let me walk. Dust is, back in the day, it was a combination of marijuana, PCP, and formaldehyde, which is embalming fluid, and people would smoke that and go crazy. Angel dust. Jay, you're right. Mixed with embalming fluid. But yeah, and that's the same thing, and not even to be that drastic and push it that far, but we could be talking about something simple. We could be talking about your job. You can be surrounded by enemies on all sides in one of those corporate environments, and you got to utter the right words. You got to speak the right words to get allies. Speak the right words so that you can make a bond with other people. Speak the right words so that you can impress your boss. What decade was this? Early 2000s, late 90s. Mostly like early 2000s for me. I was about 20, all the way up until I was like 24, 25. Where are you? I'm in Maryland now, but I'm from Connecticut. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. That's my hometown. Yeah, it was scary back then, Jack. Absolutely. But like I was saying, so you can find yourself in certain situations where unless you know how to talk, unless you got the gift of gab, you're not going to be able to get what you want. And sometimes you might not be able to survive. It was wild in Connecticut. I know, Nas, they sure was. Absolutely. And that's the same thing as with the afterlife and the Per Imheru, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You were traveling through the underworld and you would encounter these obstacles and these challenges. You would encounter demons. You would encounter the cursed dead. You would encounter cannibals. You would encounter all kinds of monsters. And you're not getting past them unless you know the right words. That's why we have to work on our communication skills. Because just like in an afterlife, you're traveling through hell. Well, guess what? If you miscommunicate with somebody, you can create hell. You can literally create hell. The author of the Per Imheru, no one knows. No one's for sure. No one knows for sure. These books are so ancient. The information is so ancient. We don't know who initially wrote them, and then they would change over the course of centuries. But yeah, as you're traveling through hell in the afterworld, same thing. You can travel through hell in this world because you create hell because you can't communicate. How many arguments you've been in with people because you couldn't communicate? Or texting. I know when I was married, I would get into arguments with my wife because I texted something and she thought I meant it in a harsh way or a mean way. And then I would call her and explain it to her like, nah, she would do the same thing to me. And we would find ourselves arguing with each other. I'm like, nah, I'm just texting you something. But because I'm texting it, she can't hear my voice or see my facial expressions, or maybe I'm miscommunicating things and not being clear. We end up creating hell. Because we didn't know the right words. Let's continue. Now, there's a serpent in the afterlife, in the Egyptian afterlife, called Apep, who the Greeks call Apophos. Apophos was a serpent who would eat your soul. And essentially, if an individual died, right, you had the afterlife in which to travel and learn and find God and use magic to get the things that you need. Like a video game, pretty much, right? But also, in the afterlife, if you came across Apep and he ate your soul, that's what they call the second death. The second death means that there is no afterlife this time. You die at a second death, you're just gone. You just cease to exist. You're gone from the universe. You're gone from the all, right? And it's the same thing now in life. In life, you have your Apep. You have your Apophos in your life. That serpent that will eat your soul that you have to overcome and get by, that could be your procrastination. It could be your job. It could be your alcoholism. It could be your laziness. It could be your shyness. It could be your lack of confidence. There is a serpent in your life, a symbolic Apophos in your life, a symbolic Apep in your life that's eating your soul and keeping your power from manifesting in a way that is magnificent and glorious and divine. I was just talking to a friend of mine, been struggling with alcoholism. Well, he struggled with alcoholism a little bit. For the most part, he kind of doesn't struggle with it. He kind of goes along with it. But he had to go back to rehab because he went to work drunk again. That's his Apophos. That liquor bottle, that's his Apophos. And this is an individual who was brilliant. He ended up with a job making like almost $100,000 a year and got a house and all of that stuff and didn't have any kind of college degrees, none of that stuff. But such a genius and so brilliant at saying what people want to hear and so well organized, and his memory is so sharp, and he's so witty and so clever. He ended up going from being a janitor at the hospital we used to work to running a department over there, and then getting promoted even higher outside of that department. And then he lost everything because of that apophos of alcoholism, and whatever other demons that he was battling that kept pushing him back to the bottle. With me, my apophos right now, I'm struggling to get up at 5 a.m. to go work out. I was doing it for a little while, but every morning I had that same battle. I'll get up at 5 every day, and I say, nah. At first, I was doing it. I was killing it. Then I'm just waking up 5 a.m. every day, looking at my clock and just saying, nah, I'm going back to sleep. But I'm going to win that battle because I love to work out. I just getting up early in the morning is killing me right now. And I used to be able to get up at 4 a.m, work out, get my kids, drop them off, go to work, go back home, and have plenty of energy. Now it's harder. But I'm going to beat it. I'm going to overcome it. How do you beat Apophos? There's a book called Smiting Apophos, where the way you get rid of the demon Apophos is you got to hit him in the head. You got to hit Apophos in the head. You must smite the head of Apophos. What does that mean? Head. You have to strike yourself in the mind. The serpent exists within you. All of this stuff, the afterlife, hell, heaven, the boat of a million years, which is what they called the solar bark that would travel through the sky, Ra's solar bark, the boat that would travel through the sky. That's all within you. So you are Apophos. You must smite your own head, meaning to change how you think. Change how you think, and you can overcome your Apophos. Right? And when you travel through the sky, travel through the heavens on the solar boat equals soul vessel. Soul equals sun. Sun equals heaven, right? So we're talking about what? We're talking about the sun and the soul are the same. So within you, there is a sun. There is an inner light that's within you. And that inner light is heaven. And that inner light is the inner cosmos. And if there's an inner cosmos, there's an outer cosmos. So the outer cosmos exists within you, as above, so below. So traveling with the sun god Ra in his solar bark through the heavens is really a metaphor for your internal journey in the vessel of your own soul as you travel through the heavens to find the inner light, the inner sun that's inside of you to light your own way. That's why it said that Jesus says, don't hide your light behind a bush. He said, what did he say? He said something about let your whole body be a lamp or something like that. I can't remember, but he facilitated the idea that the body is a body of light. And that's what we're talking about. Your body of light, your light body, your God body. It's all one and the same. Now I've been talking for a little while. I'll try to get through the last little bit quicker. This one I've always been really interested in. I've really always been interested in this next one, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You'll notice, like I said, they keep the Book of the Dead title keep popping up, but these are books about life. The next book I want to talk about is called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or the actual title of it is the Bardo Toro. The Bardo Toro has a long meaning. So the Bardo Toro means liberation through hearing during the intermediate state. So a bardo was kind of like an intermediate state or a transitional state. And they say that life is made of multiple bardos or multiple transitions or multiple stages of development. And this is once again a story about what happens after you die, but it's applicable to your own personal life. And the Bardo Toro was a book that is a funerary text. So if a person died, they would read this book aloud or recite this book aloud. A priest of Tibetan Buddhism would recite this book aloud because they believed the soul of the person was still near. The soul of the person the body was dead, but the soul was still near. The soul was still within the body. The soul was making the journey, but still close by, so the soul could still hear you. So they would say these words to kind of guide the soul and instruct the soul on how to get through the various totos so that he could find liberation. What are the 6 totos of life? 6 bardos of life, sorry. The first bardo of is the bardo of this life. So this life you're going through right now is acknowledged as a transitional stage. It's an intermediate stage. It's a stage in between this world and something else. So like I said, this life right here is the afterlife. They believe that. This life is a bardo. It's an intermediate state in between two other destinations. There's another bardo called the bardo of meditation. So meditation is another intermediate state in between the state of action and the state of moving on to a different action, between one state of being and another state of being, a state where you're unenlightened and then you meditate and go through that intermediate stage and then you open your eyes and you're enlightened or you see things differently, right? There is the bardo of dreams. So your dream is another transitional state. They believe that the state of dreaming, you're actually traveling. It's an intermediate state of the mind. There's the bardo of dying. So death is not seen as something that's permanent and terrifying and scary. Death is seen as just a transitional state into something else. Then there is the bardo of dharmata. What is dharmata? Dharmata is true reality, right? So they believe that you would die, and then after you died, you would kind of go through the state of true reality, seeing things as they truly are without the senses and the body kind of changing your perception of reality, without memory, without trauma interfering with how you see things. You see things as they truly are. And then finally you're reborn, and there's the bardo of existence. So there's a new life, a new stage, right? And all these different bardos that you go through in the Book of the Dead is just like our normal life. The first bardo is the bardo of this life. That's your normal life, the normal world. And then there's the bardo of meditation, right? What is meditation? You're looking within. So you look within yourself, and then what happens? You develop a dream. Just like you go from the bardo of life to the bardo of meditation to the bardo of dream. So you're looking within yourself in that meditative state. Develop the dream of what you want to become and what you want to happen. Then there's the bardo of dying. Same in real life. The old self has to die. In order for you to chase your dream and pursue something else, the old self has to die. And then you see things as they truly are. Once the old self is gone, you have a whole new perception. You see the world in a completely different way because that old self is dead. You've gone through another bardo. And then finally, the bardo of existence, rebirth, or going to the next level. The same thing with this. The final bardo was your rebirth. When you change, after the old self has died, your perception changes, and now you're reborn as something else. And this is not just a one-time thing. I think films and movies have interfered with how we see life. Life is not always going to have a happy ending. And even if it does have a happy ending, that doesn't mean the struggle is over. These bardos are something that you go through continuously, because you're always, hopefully, if you're growing, you're going to be constantly going through different stages, and you're going to repeat these same cycles over and over and over again. Right now, I'm going through a set of bardos too. My life is changing again. And you're going to learn new lessons, and you're going to say to yourself, okay, I've moved on. Things should be smooth sailing from here on out. And then something else happens. And you struggle again, and then you overcome, and you keep struggling. And as you develop, you're going to keep going through these same patterns. That's the interesting thing about it. And the beautiful thing about it is the fact that these bardos are just metaphors for what you deal with and you experience in life. And also, before I go, there's one more part of the text that I thought was really fascinating. And it was about gods and the devil, or demons, or whatever you want to call it. There's one part of the bardo total where the person the person has died, the person who the bardo total was being read to has died. The priest is supposed to read this part, I think on the 9th day, which is interesting because 9 means born, but that's a different conversation. But anyhow, you're traveling through the afterlife, and then on the 9th day, you reach a part of the bardo, a part of the journey where you see God, right? And it's so wonderful. And you see the gods, and you see heaven, you see paradise, you see peace. Everything is beautiful, and it's amazing, right? But then the priest is reading to you, telling you, don't get caught up in that, because it's only a projection of the mind. All this stuff that you're seeing about God and heaven is just something that your mind is projecting onto the world. And you can't reach liberation until you let go of all false perceptions and see reality as it truly is. Right? So then the next day comes, day 10 comes, and on day 10 you see demons, and you see hell, and you see pain, and you see death, and you're afraid. And the shaman or the priest is reading to you and saying, that's a projection of the mind as well. Don't get caught up in these ideas about hell. You're just projecting your mind onto the world. And if you get caught up in the fear of these nightmares, you're going to get stuck in this life or get stuck at a lower incarnation. You won't achieve the highest or the higher levels of consciousness because you keep projecting your mind onto the world around you. Because in that state, after you die, you're traveling through the bardo of your death. You're supposed to learn how to see things as they truly are. This is the bardo of Dharmata, true reality. But the mind keeps projecting images onto the reality that make you feel falsely at peace or falsely in terror. And that's another metaphor for your real life and your belief systems. A lot of times we're projecting from within ourselves onto the world around us, and that makes us unable to see what's really truly there. So all around us, they could be magnificent blessings, but we keep projecting hell onto the world outside of us. Or in many instances, the reverse. You could be in a terrible situation, but not want to see it. So you project heaven. When you learn how to control your mind and stop projecting yourself onto everything around you, that's when you can tap into true reality, tap into your true power, take true responsibility, and ascend to higher levels of accomplishments and consciousness. We must train ourselves and teach ourselves to stop seeing the world outside of us how we want it to be. We must see it as it is, so that in reality, we can achieve more, accomplish more, ascend to higher levels of consciousness. You could be in a situation where you feel like, well, I'm glad I overcame all that trauma. I feel wonderful now. Did you really overcome the trauma and put the work in, or did you just block it all out and be projecting this false image of reality onto your life? Did you really get over that last bad toxic relationship, or are you still carrying the scars with you and you're going to bring that baggage with you to the next relationship? Sadhguru, yes, I heard of Sadhguru. I love Sadhguru. I like what he did. He did a summary of the entire Mahabharata, which I really liked a lot. And I liked all this. I like all the stuff he does on Krishna, but I like Sadhguru in general. He's real electrifying, very insightful. But we must learn how to stop projecting what's inside us and creating a false image of the world. We have to see the world as it truly is. These are not demons around you, or angels, or gods. It's just the world outside of you when we're projecting everything inside onto the outside. Quite often we think of certain people as our enemies for no reason. Or we think we have these connections with people for no reason. And quite often you think you got a connection with somebody that's wonderful and special, and you got the door open, letting all these monsters into your life, all these toxic people into your life, because you're projecting your own nonsense into the world around you. And sometimes you think you got this horrible person who's right in front of you, who's trying to kill you and destroy you, but it's somebody who's really trying to look out for you. They love you, but you don't want to hear that because your own fear of love, your own fear of not getting what you want, your own inability to function, or whatever other garbage you bring to the situation. These are just projections of the mind. See them as they are, so you can be liberated. Well, that is my time. I went a few minutes over what I expected, but we had some fun. Thank you guys so much. Thank y'all for the donations, for everybody who joined me on Instagram and YouTube. Thank y'all for showing up. Insight Timer, thank y'all. Bless y'all. This has been a real cool night. I really enjoyed myself, as I always do. Thank you, Ken Q. Thank you so much. Justin, thank you. Jack, thank you. Thank y'all so much. Have a good night, everybody. Sleep well. If there's anything you guys want me to cover, Rosanna, thank you. Anything y'all want me to cover or talk about, just let me know at the next one. I'm not sure what I'll be doing at the next one. Hopefully I can get a chance to do the Lafafa Sadek. I always say I'm going to do one about the Bandlet of Righteousness, and I never do. It might be next week, or it might be something else. But I will see y'all later. Peace and blessings. Rosanna, thank you for the donation. Tiffany, bye. Jack, you following me now? Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you. All right, y'all have a good night. Peace and blessings.